The Model 3 Standard Range Plus is Tesla's cheapest vehicle. Indeed, in the UK it can be found just shy of £41,000, while the long range model that I previously reviewed can be found for £48,500. If you'd like a detailed review of the Model 3 and indeed the long range model, do check it up on your pop-up banner. Now in this review we're going to be seeing if the SR Plus is actually worth its money. Now the reason the Standard Range Plus, or SR Plus for short, is cheaper than the long range variant is because of two main points. One, it has a single motor configuration rather than the dual motor configuration, and we'll touch upon this very shortly. But secondly, and potentially more importantly to a lot of consumers, is the smaller battery pack that's found in the SR Plus. Here you have roughly 55 kilowatt hour, which according to the WLTP cycle nets around 278 miles. Now the long range model has a 82 kilowatt hour battery pack, and here it nets roughly 360 miles on the WLTP standard. Now from my own tests, I actually found in mixed driving that the long range model netted 310 miles, making it one of the longest range EVs specifically for its segment. And then the Standard Range Plus that we have on review today actually got between 230 to 250 miles, which is still very impressive for a saloon-based vehicle of its price and indeed of its class. Here it beats the likes of the VW ID.3, the Renault Zoe, the Nissan Leaf, among a few others. And of course it's far more impressive than a bit more budget solutions or smaller solutions such as the Fiat 500 electric. Suffice to say that the Standard Range Plus still sits among one of the longer range EVs on the market, be it if you're looking at a saloon or if you're looking at an SUV. Now I should also mention that the regenerative braking is an option over here. Now the regenerative braking means that you do get some energy back into the battery pack when you press on the brake pedal, or alternatively if you have the right setting through the infotainment system when you lift off from the accelerator pedal. Now given there's not many people behind, if I just lift off you can see you've got a pretty harsh regenerative braking. It's so much so that you can actually come to a complete stop, and in my opinion here, like some of its rivals, the Model 3 does a fantastic job of providing a one pedal driving approach, meaning inner city commutes become a little less cumbersome. Now of course if you want to recharge at a much more rapid rate, you can plug it in. Here the Standard Range Plus is limited to 170 kilowatt input via CCS port, and the reason I say that is because the long range model goes up to 250 kilowatts input and therefore can really benefit from the V3 superchargers or other chargers out there that offer an increased charge rate. Now via 150 kilowatt V2 supercharger, and therefore not benefiting from the full 170 kilowatt, I attained 30 to 100% in 55 minutes. Now if you were to find a V3 supercharger or were to get a 170 kilowatt input, here the vehicle will go from 20% to 80% in roughly 20 minutes, which should definitely be more than sufficient and quick enough for those motorway journeys. Now if you were to go on a 50 kilowatt input, which is a lot more common on the motorway, then it will take roughly 1 hour to attain the same figure. Now for those people who do have a workplace charger or home charger and you do have a three-phase power supply, so for example let's say an 11 kilowatt input, it will go from 0 to 100% in roughly 5.5 hours. If you were to go for the 7 kilowatt input, which is a little bit more common in these charge points, then it will take roughly 8 hours. Now if you were to go for the 3-pin plug, however, it will take roughly 24 to 28 hours. Now aside from its battery pack, the SR Plus has a single rear mounted motor which dispatches 239 kilowatts of power, that equates to 320 horsepower, and gets you 420 newton meters of readily available torque. Now this won't compete with the long range or the performance models that Tesla offers, but in comparison to some of its competitors such as let's say the VW ID.3 that offers around 150 kilowatts of input, the Model 3 SR Plus is definitely quite fun to drive. Now from 0 to 60 miles an hour I had it tested in 5.19 seconds, which beats the likes of the ID.3 or let's say the Nissan Leaf or Renault Zoe, which attain roughly the 6 to 7 mark to 60 miles an hour. Now elsewhere top speed is limited to 140 miles an hour, but yet again the SR Plus does impress in comparison to its rivals, but won't quite compete with the likes of the long range model, which gets roughly 145 miles an hour, and then the performance model which goes goes that step further at roughly 160 miles an hour as a top speed figure. Now, all that performance is very impressive, but what about when it comes to handling and its suspension setup? Well, here the SR Plus has that single rear mounted motor and therefore has a 53% rear and 47% front weight distribution, which isn't as impressive as the near perfect 50% score of the long range or performance variants. Now, don't get me wrong, when you're going around country roads at speed, you're going to have that great driver's feel because the steering input is pretty much pinpoint accurate. But I should mention here that the thing that I did kind of catch me by surprise is that when I was going on flat surfaces that were also a little bit uneven at times, so for example on the French motorways, I found that the Standard Range Plus had this kind of wobbly effect whereby it was kind of springing back and forth, up and down, which isn't the same thing that I could have said about the long range variant, which just felt a little bit more planted on the ground, and be it due to its slightly heavier weight configuration, meant that it just gave me a little bit more confidence if I was driving at speed. Now, very much on the in-cabin experience, I should mention the seats themselves, because here they're absolutely cushiony soft, very much like the long-range model. I had no problems whatsoever when it comes to lower back pain, be it at the front of the cabin or indeed at the rear of the cabin. Elsewhere, it's made out of an all-vegan material, which is always a definite plus point, and they're also very easy to clean down, even if you go for the white interior option like we have on review. Now, elsewhere, in terms of headroom and legroom, it's absolutely plentiful, be it at the front of the cabin or indeed at the rear of the cabin. As someone who's just under 6 foot, I have no issues whatsoever here. I would go as far as saying if someone who is just around 6'4" to 6'7" won't feel hemmed in either. Now, for the increased comfort, there is also heated front seats and electronically adjustable seats at the front, although at the rear, unlike the long-range model that does offer heated seats as standard, this does not come included in the Standard Range Plus. However, Tesla did unlock the capabilities because the hardware is there, and therefore if you do want the heated rear seats, you'll have to purchase that as an additional option. Now, elsewhere, Tesla has also integrated electronic door releases, which makes it easy to get out of the vehicle. All you have to do is press a button, and in a case of emergency, you can use the manual door release. It should be mentioned that getting in the vehicle could be a little bit trickier for some people who are not accustomed to the Tesla way, so to speak, because the door handles are integrated within the door frame, and as such, it means that you kind of have to use a slight technique in order to open it. It doesn't take too long to get used to, but it's just something I thought to point out. Now, on the subject of electronic control, there is also the tailgate, which as standard is electronically opened. It can be opened via the infotainment system or indeed via a button that can be found at the back of the boot, or indeed via the app. Now, here what you'll find is that the boot reveals 370 litres of space, and unofficially with the seats down, this extends up to 1,235 litres. It's worth bearing in mind that here it's not as practical as some of its alternatives, whereby it doesn't have a hatchback design, nor does it have an integrated ski latch, making it a little bit easier to take elongated goods while still transporting 2 occupants at the rear of the cabin. Don't get me wrong, you can still transport 2 occupants, although it just should be bear in mind that one person will have to take the rear middle seat. Now, elsewhere, you do also have a front storage space which adds around 50 litres, and here it means that, well, it adds a little extra space for those goods that you might not access as often. The reason I say that is because it's not electronically adjustable, whereby you can electronically open it via the infotainment system or via the app. When it comes to closing it, you need to manually push it down, and it's slightly a shame, which means that, well, the usability and practicality side of the frunk might be a little bit redundant for some individuals. Now, moving swiftly on, we get onto storage within the cabin, and here it's absolutely plentiful. At the front, you've got the door bins, which are pretty large, that can fit a 500ml bottle with ease alongside a large size purse or wallet. You've got the glove compartment, which is electronically open, and also you can set a pin in order for you to add and bolster the security. In here you can stow away certain valuables from prying eyes. And then you've got the center console. Now, at the top you have got these 2 wireless charging bays, and this means that if your phone has got QI wireless certification, then you can wirelessly charge your phone and place it there. And also, as it's got kind of like a fabric type of material, means that it's not going to be really slipping all over the place, so it's a good little implementation by Tesla. Then further down you've got a retractable area, which also reveals a pretty decent amount of space, and 2 Type-C ports, which are useful for charging. Further down you've got 2 cup holder units, and then you've got the armrest compartment, which opens up and then then reveals even further storage space, which means that really you're not going to have any problems when it comes to storing goods within the front of the cabin. Now moving to the rear of the cabin, you have got a pull down armrest compartment which can be used if you're not using the rear middle seat, and here you'll find 2 cup holders, and then of course you've got the door bins which aren't as large as the front two but will suffice for your rear occupants. Elsewhere, when it comes to convenience, you've got some air vents which you can customize, and also 2 Type-C ports which are useful for charging. Now moving on to technology, here the 15.4-inch horizontal display really dominates the dashboard, and through it you can change your vehicle settings. You can of course navigate to your local supercharger or indeed some charge points out there. You can operate vehicle settings such as opening the front or the rear boot compartment, and of course if you so wish you can even play games when you are supercharging, so therefore you can keep yourself or indeed the kids entertained. Now it should be mentioned that the display here really does all the controls, from volume controls to your climate controls, and even shows your speedometer, including the safety systems that are in operation. The reason I say that is because the Model 3 Standard Range Plus, very much like the other Tesla Model 3s out there, doesn't integrate a head-up display, nor does it integrate a instrument cluster, and to some people like myself that might throw you off a little bit, because you might feel that you're kind of glancing away from the road a little bit more and looking more towards the center of the display in order just to check your speed and make sure you're not even caught speeding, for example. Now nevertheless, some people like that, some people hate that, so do let me know in the comments below in which camp you sit in. Now another area that's quite subjective is in terms of audio. Now here the Model 3 Standard Range Plus has 8 speakers and no subwoofer, whilst the Long Range and Performance has 15 speakers, and that also includes a subwoofer, therefore bolstering the overall audio experience. And therefore if you're quite an audiophile, you really appreciate your music, then I think you'll really love the audio system that's found within the Performance or indeed the Long Range model. Suffice to say, however, the Standard Range Plus is still very impressive, although it does miss a little bit of a low-end grunt. Now if you want more details about the audio system, definitely do check it out on your pop-up banner down the description below or in the pinned comments, where I'll go into a little bit more detail as to how the Standard Range Plus performs on the whole in terms of its audio prowess in comparison to its competitors and indeed its long-range sibling. Now elsewhere you've got the Tesla app, which gives you plenty of extra functionalities. Now it's worth bearing in mind that the app also serves as your wireless key, so in this respect you can use it in order to lock and unlock the vehicle. Now elsewhere it's worth bearing in mind that you can set your climate controls, check the location of your vehicle, and elsewhere also activate Sentry mode through the security tab, which will effectively allow you to have all the cameras activated while you're away from the vehicle, so in the incident of someone trying to vandalize or indeed damage your vehicle, then you'll have video evidence through your infotainment system. And finally we get onto its exterior design, and here subjectively I think the Model 3 looks absolutely stunning. It does differentiate itself from other vehicles on the market, and indeed electric vehicles as well. And when it comes to the Standard Range Plus in comparison to the Long Range model, other than a dual motor sign that can be found at the rear of the vehicle, they're pretty much identical. Now here you've got 18-inch aero rims that come as standard. If you prefer some sport style alloys, you can find them for £1,500. And elsewhere when it comes to colour, it's available in a white finish, at least at the time of filming, because this sometimes does vary between black and white. And then if you do want the black, grey or blue finishes, it comes in at £1,100, and if you want the red premium finish, then it comes in at a whopping £2,100. And so this leads me on to my verdict. Would I recommend the Model 3 SR Plus? Well, if you're looking for the cheapest Tesla experience, you're not too fussed about the total amount of range, whereby 230 to 250 miles will suffice, and you're not too concerned about the peak performance, whereby you don't need a dual motor configuration, then the SR Plus is arguably the best at the time of filming. And as a result, it actually gets our Best Buy award. However, consider that there are some other alternatives. If you do not want the Tesla experience, or you just simply want a great all-rounder in terms of an electric vehicle, then look into the VW ID.3, the Renault Zoe, or the Nissan Leaf, all of which offer a compelling alternative, and ones that come in at around £27,000 to £30,000, thereby coming in at roughly £10,000 cheaper than the SR Plus. Now, I'd be intrigued to hear which model you would pick if you were having to look between the range, be it from Tesla or indeed some of the alternatives out there on the market. Do let us know in the comments section below. Now, if you've liked this independent review, definitely do drop a like, subscribe and hit that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Take care and goodbye.